All right, everyone, we'd like to welcome a special guest to the program, lifelong actor and general golf nut, Hollywood's own Bruce McGill. Thanks for joining, Bruce. How's everything going? You cooped up here in L.A.?
I don't like to use the word cooped up. I like to use the word I'm at liberty to stay at home all the time I want.
That's a great answer. So just for a little bit of background for our listeners, a few years back, Golf Digest ranked Hollywood's top 100 golfers. You came in at a tie for 19th, one spot ahead of Kurt Russell, and just behind a man that I believe you share a locker room with, in Andy Garcia.
Wow.
So what are you doing to maintain that top 20 form during all of this that's going on?
Oh, I had to let that kind of stuff go some years ago. I'm about 70 now, and I know that my scoring days are behind me. And I've found new joys in the game because, I still play and I still love to play. But I can't. I hit a ball what I think is perfectly. It used to go, 250-ish, and now I'm lucky to get 220 out of it. So I don't worry so much. It's taken a long time to not worry so much about scoring, but I have finally gotten to it, and especially now after the situation we're all living through now, the joys of the game are many besides what you shoot.
Last year, the SCGA Amateur was at your home club of Lakeside Golf Club. How cool is it to watch SoCal's best just absolutely bomb it around that home track, which was in fantastic shape as always?
Oh, it was just I saw you there, and I know you were there enjoying it. Maybe you had to be there, but I was there because, this is cool.
It was your birthday. It was your birthday that day.
It was my birthday, that's right. And I thought, what a great birthday present. My wife said, what do you want for your birthday? I said, I just want to go on over there and watch these kids. And kids and grown-ups, it's anybody.
Yep.
And it was also nice to watch that nobody devoured that golf course. I mean, there's a classic example of an old course that's still fun for even top players. It's without any water hazards and without enormous length. Although it's the biggest par 70 course around. A lot of those par fours are, for me now, they're like unreachable, and I just quit worrying about it. I just sort of put my ego in check and just said, okay, you can par this if you one putt.
So changing gears here a little bit, a few years back in 1978, you landed the role of D-Day in a little film called Animal House, which obviously quickly became one of the best comedies of all time. How'd you get involved with a role like that, which would eventually jumpstart your career?
It was a pretty good gig. I came out of the theater. I was a stage actor, and I was doing Shakespeare in the Park at that time, which was my forte. Was classic. I was classically trained, and I loved doing Shakespeare. It was a great training ground. If you can deliver that stuff, and it sounds like a real person, you can deliver anything that's well written. So I was doing that, and I was living in New York, and they came to the audition for that, and I'd already done a good role in a studio picture film called Handle with Care, directed by Jonathan Demme. So I was above the masses, I was past the cattle call stage.
Mm-hmm.
And I got called in and auditioned for it, and I was rejected, told I didn't get it. And a friend of mine at the time, he's gone now, but he was a dear friend, Doug Kenny, was one of the guys that wrote it. He was used to be the editor of the Harvard Lampoon, and quite guy, also responsible for Caddyshack. But he was a great guy, and he said, well, what happened? And I said, I don't know. They just said, no, not you. And it turned out that what they were doing, because if you'll remember the film, D-Day didn't have a lot of dialogue. So in the audition process, they were just having the guys reading for D-Day read Belushi's lines, Bluto. And it was a flawed, to say the least, audition process. And I didn't learn that until we were doing the press junket for the release. And the director, John Landis, told this story to the press, and I happened to be in the same interview. He said, well, we made a mistake. We were reading D-Day auditioners with Bluto's material, and so we were rejecting everybody. So the studio finally said, look, we're going to shoot in a week. You got to cast this part, or we're going to go have everybody on location for rehearsal in a week. You have to cast this part. And I'd already let it go. You get really good at handling rejection as an actor, just like you do getting over a bad shot as a golfer. Just, take it and move on. So what had happened was they were mis-auditioning. So he had just seen me in a production of, I think it was Henry V, Shakespeare in the Park. And so he had this list of scratched off actors from his final callbacks. I don't know, he said there were 20 or 25 actors still in the running, all of them scratched off. So he looked down and said, okay, who's the best scratched off actor on my list? Oh, I saw that guy last night in Shakespeare. He was really good, Bruce McGill. So that's the process, and that's how I got the job.
Wow, how about that? And
how about that?
I believe we first see you ripping the motorcycle through the front door. That's quite the scene.
It's a great entrance, isn't it?
It sure is. It sure is. So the movie was filmed at University of Oregon, and all the actors were assigned a room at the nearby Roadway Inn, I believe, if that's true.
It was some kind. It was. I think it's now called the Red Lion Inn or the Red Roof Inn.
Okay. Pretty low budget.
Yeah, pretty. Well, it wasn't horrible if you've been a New York stage actor. It was. I won't say it was a step up, but it was. Clean sheets and towels every single day. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's a good point. So rumor has it your room was quote unquote party central for the off days. Is there any truth to that?
It wasn't just off days. It was every night.
Legendary.
The thing is, you see, you've obviously done some research. You may know this story too. We were all very excited to be there, and we went out with some local girls that said, we're going to take you to fraternity parties, because most of us had not had the fraternity experience in college. So we went out, long story short, we went to the SAE house, which was a lot of jocks, and they started screaming at us, and they basically, 100 of them or so, beat us up. They said, you Hollywood, and you can't say this word anymore, but I'm going to say it because this is quoting history. You Hollywood, get out of here. And I don't think one of us was even remotely homosexual. I think we were red-blooded, women-loving American men, and it was a shocking experience. So after that, we decided we'd stay closer to home. Plus, we were working. It was a relatively low budget for a Universal Studio picture, so we were working very long hours, and so we would get back to the compound, which was this side of the interstate roadway inn or whatever it was. And I'm a musician. I play guitar and piano, and I would play the guitar in my room. And I also was born and raised in Texas, and we knew how to party. And Oregon was a state store, liquor store. You couldn't just go to any store like a grocery store and buy liquor. So I got a ride to the state stores, and I bought big bottles of booze so I could, have a drink with the guys without us going out and risking getting hammered again by rednecks or whatever color the necks are up there in Oregon. And so people would come by the room, and I'd play and sing, and they'd sing along. And then one day I found a piano in a storage closet where they stored all the uniforms for the waiters, all these red jackets and this little spinet. So myself and a couple of the Teamsters just liberated that spinet, walked it across the parking lot, and put it in my room. And of course, management was, they were outraged. And some guy who was just an assistant manager, as we're carrying it, me and two or three burly guys are carrying this little piano across the parking lot to one of the buildings where my room was. And he said, no, you can't take this piano. And I said, oh, no, listen, nobody's using it. It was back there. The keyboard was even facing the wall. You guys have another piano in your banquet space. So I'm writing a song for the movie, and they told me that I could borrow this. So it'll be there. I'm not going to take it anywhere. And so he went, oh, okay. The part felt bad for the guy. But so we had it in my room for a couple of days, and I came home from work one day, and it was gone. They'd taken it back. So we took it again.
in true Delta form.
Really, when you look back on it, it was sort of a true Delta K form. Well, it was a victimless crime, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yes, that is true that we had a great time.
Yeah, well, two others that I know were welcome there are two of your friends nowadays, Jamie Widows, who was Hoover, and Tim Matheson, who is Otter. You guys remain friends to this day and often find yourselves on the golf course. I'd be impressed if your handicaps were as low as your GPAs, but what about golf brings you guys together? Jamie is the guy that got me started playing. I played a little when I was a kid because my father wanted me to, but I never had clubs. I would go out with him and use my mother's clubs because he was left-handed. But one day, Jamie and I were doing the television series Delta House based on Animal House. And he wakes me up, and I was a partier in those days, and so,
8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning was like I'd only been asleep for 3 or 4 hours. And so Jamie, who was 6'6", said he decided he was getting custom fit longer clubs, and that I was going to buy his golf clubs, which were Ben Hogan Apex 2 blades, I remember. And I said, leave me alone. I'm sleeping. Get away from me. And so I just said, okay, I'll buy him $90. I paid him $90 for this set of beautiful irons, which I didn't realize when you start out, you should probably have a little bit more forgiving a club. But he got me started. So he and I have a real deep bond of golf. And then Tim and I were really close friends. And when I was coming out of a Broadway show in the early 80s, I think in 84, I gave my 2-week notice and left. And Tim and I went to Scotland and played golf all over Scotland. And it was just fantastic. It was great.
Yeah, that's really cool. The birthplace of golf over there. I'm sure that was a great time. So some years down the road, you land a role as Walter Hagen in The Legend of Bagger Vance.
Now you're talking. I have to say, as a golf show, you spent way too long on an Animal House.
Well, I have an affinity, and I owed it to my father, who's a big Animal House fan.
I really will give you my best, and you guys have a lot of class, all low.
Yeah, will do. So for the record, I think Bagger Vance is a criminally underrated golf film, and I'm not just saying that because I got you on the phone here. But, knowing your affinity for the game, did you seek out that role in a golf movie, or did it just happen naturally?
Oh, well, God, I didn't even know it was happening. I mean, I'd read the book, and I was actually in the middle of the Pacific Ocean sailing a small boat from I bought the boat in Hawaii and sailed it back to Los Angeles, which, if you know sailing, that is like one of the worst trips in the world because it's against wind and weather, and there's nothing between Hawaii and Los Angeles but ocean. And it's against the trades, and it's a very, very grown-up sailing trip. So that's where I was. I was in the middle of the ocean. And I got into Marina del Rey without major incident. It was a fantastic, life-changing, great trip. Mm-hmm. And I get a phone call. I mean, I still had sea legs. I couldn't walk. I looked like I was smashed, drunk. I mean, I could walk. If I'd try to walk a straight line, it just was not possible because we'd been at sea for so long. And you learn that sea legs are a real, actual thing, and it takes a few days for your inner ear to realize you're back on land and to straighten you up. So I get this phone call about that role in that movie, and I was like, oh, yes, God, yes. So, and I usually don't do this. I don't usually dress up like the part and put too much of a hard sell on it, especially after I'd done however many movies I'd already done when I got that call. But in this case, I wanted it so bad, I shaved off my sea beard, slicked back my hair because I knew exactly who Walter Hagen was, and I took some hickory-shafted clubs that I happened to have just, as like things to look at, mementos. I didn't play with them. But I got some clothes that I'd worn in a 20s era play, some beautiful white wool trousers, and one of those V-neck tennis sweaters. And so I spiffed myself up as Hagen and took the spikes out of a pair of old golf shoes so I could drive my car and walk and go into the offices at Universal. And I went in there with this hickory-shafted club, and I knew what I was doing, and nobody was going to whip me. And you also had to be a single-digit handicap with proof in order to audition for either Jones or Hagen.
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
it is. Well, Robert Redford, who was I loved working with. He was a great director, and he knew he had a non-golfer in Matt Damon, who bless his heart, he worked till his hands bled getting ready to play that part. But nobody can learn a real golf swing in 5 weeks. It's just not possible. So you had to be single digit with proof, and I was. And it was not like just your agent says, oh, yeah, he plays golf all the time. He's a terrific golfer. It's like your agents tell them, oh, yeah, Westerns, oh, yeah, he's born in the saddle, rides like the wind. And the actor's never been on a horse in his life. So you had to have proof. And even with, and I had a handicap at the time. So even with proof of the SCGA handicap card, you still had to be put on film. There was a crew there to shoot you. And when I got in from the sea, they were already in Savannah and I was in LA. And the kids that came out to video my swing didn't know what they were doing. So I said, look, let me direct this episode. And I stood up on the kind of narrow edge of a fountain at Robert Redford's LA offices. and so that they could put their lens about belly button height, the way they shoot most, golfers for Golf Digest and stuff like that. So you can see where everything is, and it's not a skewed angle. And so I just said, okay, shoot this, and I did a few swings. And I said, okay, now go over to the side and shoot that, so they could see, line of flight, and they could see me directly on, and they could see me from behind. And so that went to Redford, who was in Savannah, Georgia. And by the time I got back from, the audition and that thing in his offices, the disc that they'd burned had been taken to Redford's house, stuck in the machine. He'd seen it, and he said, "Yep, that's the guy." So I had the part. I came in out of the rush hour traffic and got into my house, and there was a phone call, and there was a congratulations, you're going to play Walter Hagen. I did. Every one of the shots hit in there was hit by me, including the 2-iron off the beach in wet sand without my shoes on.
Yep. While you were smoking a dart, you had to put it down for that one.
That's right.
Yep.
And I practiced. I didn't smoke when I got the part, but I told my wife I got to practice smoking because it's really important when I get ready to do that shot that I flick that cigarette like a guy who smoked a million of them. And by the time I got there, because I practiced so hard, I could flick it lob flick through the frame. I could flick it hard across the frame. I could flick it high or low across the flames. I mean, I could almost have flicked it into golf cups from 10 feet.
That's just pure talent right there, Bruce.
Nope, that's skill. That's not talent.
Skill.
That's just skill and hard work. It's hard work smoking all those cigarettes. My wife said, "Sure, it's hard work." So drinking whiskey and smoking cigarettes. You poor boy.
Yeah, you poor boy. So, Bruce, I'll leave you with this. This has been wonderful. But being the avid golfer that you are, I know you're hurting like all of us not being out there. What are you looking forward to most when you're able to get back on the golf course? And you cannot say the double tequila.
No, strictly the golf. Just the reunion with an old friend, the game, Old Man Parr. And now, I mean, it used to be baby birdies that thrilled me. Now, Old Man Parr at Lakeside is a thrill. I mean, on the easier holes, it's not a thrill, but on those that I can't reach in two, if I par, 14, 17, 8, oh man, I'm stoked. So I'll miss that, and of course, let's never forget that it's a social game, and the society and the company of friends that are. And the other great thing about golf is it's such a humiliating game that you don't meet many egotists who continue to play the game because they are humbled, every time they play. Everybody misses shot, including the very best. So you're like-minded in that you love the game, but you're also like-minded in that you can't for very long play that game and have an inflatable ego.
Well, Bruce, thanks again for joining us here.
You bet, Jonathan. I think it's a great thing you're doing. It's a great great escape now. I mean, I'm finding all kinds of things besides watching. I manage my own money, and I watch that pretty carefully because that's very interesting. And I watch cooking shows because I'm doing all the cooking because I'm a good cook. So it's nice to turn on. And I watched Max Homa's, and I really enjoyed it. What a classy, well-spoken guy. Yeah, I did. Well, I wasn't going to just. In fact, what pictures of me are you going to put up? It better not be the fat ones.
Probably mostly. We'll probably do like a slow-mo of you flicking the cigarette.
No, that's very cool.
We'll do frame by frame. We'll definitely D-Day will be in there.
Okay, D-Day or Hagen are perfectly fine.
Okay, we'll make that happen. And I'm still going to hold you to your promise of getting me out there with you, Hoover, and Otter. All right.
Okay, I'll tell you what, you're welcome.
Animal House foursome. I'm there. You name the date.
They may be. Maybe we'll just put a little squeeze on them this time. They sort of maybe that sounds like a great idea, and then it doesn't follow through. But certainly, even if they don't, you come on out there and we'll tee it up.
All right, Bruce. Well, until then, stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Good health to you.
All right. Farewell.